There was a video game that officially never existed. It wasn't released by any known company, it wasn't advertised, and no verified copy has ever been found. And yet, for decades, people have claimed they saw it, played it, and were changed by it. The game was called Polybius, and according to the story, it appeared in arcades in Portland, Oregon around 1981 during the golden age of arcade gaming. At first, it didn't look like much, just a plain black arcade cabinet, standing quietly among more colorful machines. No branding, no marketing, nothing that would make it stand out, except for the people gathering around it. Those who played it described something unusual. The visuals were abstract, filled with geometric patterns and flashing lights that seemed almost hypnotic. The longer you played, and the more intense it became. And strangely, people didn't enjoy it. They became obsessed. According to the legend, players would line up just to get a turn. Some would even argue or fight over the machine. But what made the Polybius truly disturbing wasn't its popularity. It was what happened after people played it. Reports began to surface. Players experiencing headaches, insomnia, memory loss, and even hallucinations. Some claimed they had nightmares. Others said they felt like they had lost control over their own thoughts. In most extreme versions of the story, a few players allegedly went insane, and some even took their own lives. Despite these effects, people kept coming back. That's what made their story so unsettling. It wasn't just addictive, it was something deeper, something that seemed to affect their mind itself. And then there were the other witnesses, the ones who weren't playing the game, but watching it. They describe men in black suits visiting the machines, suddenly observing and collecting data, as if the arcade itself was part of an experiment. This is where the theory begins to shape. Some people started to believe that Polybius wasn't just a game. It was part of a secret government project, possibly connected to mind control experiments like MK Ultra. And considering such programs really did exist, the idea didn't seem entirely impossible. But as convincing as the story sounds, when you begin to examine the evidence, things started to fall apart. There is no verified proof that Polybius ever existed. No arcade cabinet has ever been found. No original game software have ever, surfaced. No newspapers or gaming magazines from the 1980s ever mentioned it. In fact, everything we know about Polybius comes from much later sources, not from the time it supposed appeared. The earliest known reference to Polybius online appeared in 1998 on a website called coinup.org, where a page claimed to show a screenshot from the game. However, later research suggested that even this entry may have been uploaded years after the day it claimed. An archived version from 2000 includes a simple but revealing line: "New edition. Anyone heard of this game?" This suggests that Polybius wasn't been documented as a known phenomenon, but introduced as a question. In 2003, a gaming magazine published an article describing the game's existence as inconclusive. But even that article relied on the same, online source. A few years later, someone claimed to be connected to the materials company behind, Polybius appeared online. But again, no evidence supported the claim. The supposed developer, has no real-world records, and even its name is linguistically incorrect, roughly translating to sense deletion. To inform that isn't proper German. Looking at all of this, many researchers now believe that Polybius wasn't discovered, but invented, possibly as part of an early internet culture, where mystery and speculation spread quickly without verification. And yet, the story didn't come from nothing. In 1981, real events were taking place in Portland arcades. Two players became ill on the same day. One teenager collapsed after experiencing a severe nightmare following a gaming session. Around the same time, another player pushed himself to extreme limits while attempting to break a record. Just 10 days later, the Federal Bureau of Investigation raided several arcades, including illegal gambling modification inside the machines. And then, agents were soon monitoring players and recording data, behavior that could easily be misunderstood by observers. At the same time, society was increasingly concerned about video games. Articles warned that addiction organizations claimed games could promote violence, and there were real cases of seizures triggered by arcade machines. A teenager's death while playing the game further fueled rumors that certain machines could be dangerous. When you combine all of this with human memory, the story becomes even clearer. People who claim to remember Polybius may actually be, recalling other untrue games from the era. For example, Cuba Quest features real, almost hallucinatory visuals created using advanced laser-based technology. Tempest was an intense geometric game requiring deep concentration, and Polyplay had a similar name and visual style. Over time, memories of these games may have blended together, forming something new. There were also rumors during the 1970s and early 1980s about arcade games designed to hypnotize or influence players. At the same time, companies like Atari were quietly testing unfinished games in public arcades, observing how players reacted without telling them. Even the U.S. military modified games for training purposes, such as adapting Battlezone into a simulator and later modifying Doom 2 into a military training program. These real practices made the idea of games being used for experimentation feel believable. So Polybius may not have been a single real machine, but rather a story built from many real elements, events, fears, technologies, and misunderstandings, all combining to one powerful legend. And yet, the story didn't end when people, started believing it. In fact, that's when Polybius truly began to spread. Over the years, Polybius has appeared again and again, not as a real game, but as a cultural symbol. It has shown up in music, television, films, and even modern video games, often used to evoke a sense of mystery and nostalgia for the 1980s. It appeared as a hidden reference in the music video less than by a 9-inch nails, and it made cameos in shows like The Simpsons and The Goldbergs. In Marvel series Lucky, its appearance sparked discussions about conspiracy theories and multiverse connections. It also appeared in Paper Girls, helping reinforce its 1980s sci-fi atmosphere. The legend even inspired real creations. In 2007, developers attempted to recreate the game based on the descriptions found online. And in 2016, another version was released for virtual reality. At one point, a developer even claimed to have played the original game, but later admitted that the claim itself was part of the myth. Over time, Polybius transformed from a rumor into something much bigger, a cultural phenomenon And some have, described it as the most dangerous video game that never existed, while others compare it to a missile object in literature, something everyone talks about, but no one can prove. And maybe that's why it still matters, because Polybius isn't really about the game. It's about the fear of losing control, the fear of being observed, and the fear that something designed for entertainment could be used for something else entirely. And even today, those fears haven't disappeared. They have just changed the form. So in the end, maybe the real question isn't whether Polybius existed. Maybe the real question is, if something like Polybius were created today, would we be able to recognize it? So what do you think about this story? If you find this story interesting, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe.